So I'm very happy to be able to introduce Dr. Nanavanti today. We actually go way back, I think at least 25 years. Unfortunately, our professional paths have not crossed as often as I would have liked to have them cross, but I'm thrilled that he agreed to talk today. I think, he is a family practice physician by training, but moved into integrative medicine. And I think he brings such unique and valuable perspective and a way to interact with patients that is so much different than a medical model. So I'm just thrilled and anxious to hear his presentation. So Dr. Nanavanti, actually, let me unmute you. You have to unmute yourself there. Good.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it. So full disclosure, Pat was actually one of my faculty and trained me. So if you don't like the presentation, it's because he trained me. But I think this is really, really important. And for me, I was a medical student from 1992 to 1996 and spent the first summer of medical school at University of Rochester. There's a movement disorder clinic, their mind clinic, where they actually worked with a lot of patients with Parkinson's and Huntington's and other movement disorder conditions. And so I became interested then, and as a family doc, have had an opportunity to work with my patients as well and in our community as well. And I think it's really important. And this talk is really, in two ways, it addresses a couple of things. One is really helping to understand perspective and the importance of self-care for the caregiver, because that's really important. And something I like to say often is that a tree without roots provides very little shade, right? And so when we think about it, for ourselves, if we are not rooted in our own sense of health and well-being, it's hard for us to then be caregivers for those in our life. And for those that have Parkinson's, for us to help them to function optimally as best as we can, whether it be utilizing, medication, but also in terms of self-care and lifestyle, what are the things that we can do to help? And so that's part of what I'm going to talk about. Can you guys hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay. I'll make sure that is loud. And so I'm going to share a screen. Cynthia, can you hear us okay?
Yes, it was the music that was so loud on my computer.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thanks, Pat. I'll unmute now.
Okay. So I'm going to just share my screen. Okay. So, say bye to everybody for a little bit because we're going to watch a different screen for a little bit and then we'll all reconnect. And I'm going to share some slides with you guys that'll probably go about a half hour or so. But I'm going to be talking through it and see what you think. And if questions come up, you can let us know and we'll kind of work at it from there. Okay. So I'm going to just do the screen share. Okay. And so what I want to talk about is really this idea of what we need to do and what we need to think about and how we rethink what our focus is, right? So I like to say that all you need in life are two things, contentment and peace, and everything else is a want, right? And it's easy for me to say, and yet when we put it into practice, the thing we have to think about is what does contentment and peace really mean for me at this stage in my life, and also for my loved one, and how can we help to try to optimize that, right? So that's really the crux of it. And specifically for Parkinson's, there are some resources, and what I'll do is I'll forward these slides to Pat so you can share them with everybody if you like.
Great.
Where there are some online resources that actually help caregivers in terms of knowing what they can do and how they can connect to even local or national organizations for tools and resources that help us to try to at least maintain a sense of well-being for ourselves while we're caring for our loved ones as well. Parkinson's is a condition that, we use words like progressive or degenerative, and they're not always the nicest words, but it's also unpredictable. And so what we want to do is try to work with the things that we can to try to optimize the quality of life as best as we can. And the way I think about it is I think about healthcare as a tree, right? And so if you think about it, disease prevention is the trunk of the tree. Disease management are the branches. Innovations are the leaves that can become new branches or fall by the wayside. But the roots are wellness promotion, right? And so we need to root ourselves in our own sense of health and well-being. And my role currently is as the Assistant Dean of Wellness at Upstate, and also as a family physician, integrative family physician, and also as the director of the survivorship program and the integrative cancer program at the Cancer Center. And a lot of what I do every day is to help people to recognize how they can optimize their own sense of wellness. I've written 3 books on this called The Core 4 of Wellness. And so a lot of what I'll talk to you about will actually get into some of those things. So you'll have it directly from, well, the horse's mouth himself, right? So that'll be good. What we think about is this. When it comes to things like Parkinson's, when it comes to even when we think about people who are experiencing dementia over time, forgetfulness, there's a lot of overlap with things like depression. And so patients oftentimes will feel these symptoms of fatigue, depression, the rigidity or stiffness, slowed movements, right? Their facial expression becomes a little more flat, right? And it's not that the person isn't feeling the feelings, it's that their facial expression, the muscles don't quite show it in the same way. They get a tremor, a resting tremor, what we call a pill rolling tremor, right? And then early on, especially when you start to realize that this is happening, we feel a lot of anxiety and restlessness, right, along with the depression. And people feel, they even sometimes get insomnia or difficulty sleeping, and then difficulty with their thoughts, controlling them, and also in terms of just recognizing and connecting them, right? On the other hand, for the caregiver, what happens is there's a lot of fatigue because we're, constantly watching out, making sure that they're, safe and that they have what they need, right? Depression, resentfulness, not necessarily even with your loved one as much as at the Parkinson's itself, right? Why did this have to happen? Why did it have to happen to him or her? Why did it happen to us, right? What did we do wrong? Sometimes there are even feelings of guilt. Did we do something that brought this on? And unfortunately, with this condition, it's not that. It's primarily more of a genetic thing. And then sometimes inflammation can trigger the onset. We think about, losing patience and getting agitated when we have to repeat things because the person doesn't remember, right? And then some people will even go to doing things like abusing things like alcohol or nicotine or other things, right? And it may introduce new or worsening health problems for the caregiver simply because of the stress. Anxiety, insomnia, and then the cognitive difficulties are all tied into stress and how we cope with it, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and what you can do as well, right? So what can you do, right? The most important thing is to, first of all, acknowledge the problem itself. As a caregiver, sometimes we're in denial also. Oh, it's probably nothing. It's just too much stress. Oh, no, this is going to get better, right? And sometimes we have to realize if we're seeing a change and there's a genetic potential, right, or the signs and symptoms are pointing to it, then we have to really think about that, right? When we accept the problem as being real, we're going to take the steps now to deal with it. When we're in denial, what we do is end up feeling stuck or getting ourselves stuck because we're in denial. We don't know how much action to take, or we don't take any action thinking it'll go away. And in this case, it doesn't simply go away, right? So that's really important. And then accepting your feelings. If you're upset, if you're sad, if you're angry, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you know, when we acknowledge the feeling, we have the ability to manage it. When we don't acknowledge it, it's sort of like something that's, you know, there, and we feel distressed, unsettled, but we don't really accept and acknowledge the feeling, so then we don't deal with it, right? So that's important. The other thing I say is forgive yourself. Why? Because guilt is a natural and inherent part when we're dealing with illness. We think we've triggered something. Sometimes we blame ourselves. You know, was I being too difficult, or did I push too much pressure on them that now this is happening? And oftentimes it's much bigger than that. We tend to think that with chronic conditions, oftentimes 40% is genetic, 40% can be the, you know, environmental in terms of life in general, and then 20% could be anything, right? It could be random. And so we have to think about, once we acknowledge and accept, then we can seek help, right? And help comes in many forms, like today, the support group, right? Local and web-based resources, like I pointed out, working with a counselor or social worker, especially if we need support within the home, it's really important. And then even the idea of respite or the opportunity, sometimes we need to be able to refuel in order to be able to support better, right? So sometimes we feel like we're running on empty, and respite care is a real thing, where sometimes either a person can come to your home, or your loved one gets to go to a facility that is basically, in a sense, like a hotel with care services, where they can stay for a few days. For those that are veterans, the VA actually offers this as an option as well. And so that's something that people can do, right? We think about other things, mind-body therapy. So something called mindfulness-based stress reduction is actually an 8-week program that has benefit on how we deal with stress. So mindfulness is about just being present here now, right? As we're all on this screen, right, and you guys are watching these slides, at this moment specifically, when I saw you guys, at least you guys look okay, you're okay. Now this next moment comes, you're still okay. And most of the day is actually these okay moments. But what we get overwhelmed by sometimes are the moments that are not okay, and then our mind stays stuck there, right? Or stays stuck on the label of they've got Parkinson's. And so we think, you know, this is bad, this is no good, it's unacceptable. But from moment to moment, they're doing okay. And we have to remember that, right? There's also this idea of things that can help people. So when we're caregivers dealing with our loved one with Parkinson's, using things like the mindfulness-based stress reduction or deep breathing, some people call it meditation, some people will pray, some people just sit in reflection. You can actually do reminiscence, right? Where you're reminiscing, focusing on happy memories. And that can also benefit with dementia, and also a life review. So you can reframe, re-explore, and redefine, right? What it is that you've experienced in life, the joys, the journey in itself, right? And then some people will even use hypnosis or guided imagery, where when you close your eyes, you can visualize a scene or a setting. And then as you sit and breathe comfortably and relaxed, you actually just start looking at the details. So if I'm looking at the picture of a river flowing by, a log cabin in the woods, you know, now I start to see the colors of the trees, right? I start to see the bark on the trees, the color of the roof on the log cabin, the people inside, the water flowing, the birds flowing by, and so it goes. And I start to see more and more details, but that brings me to a place where I'm feeling joyful and calm and also focused. So this is something that people use, and it's an approach that can benefit. For things like mindfulness, there's an app on the phone, if you have a smartphone that you use, called Insight Timer, INSIGHT, Timer. Again, that's INSIGHT, Timer, okay? And Insight Timer, along with another app called Headspace and Calm, and there are several others, are all apps that actually allow you to be able to just follow a guided meditation, or the Insight Timer actually has a timer button where you can listen to just some music in the background like we were listening to before while you sit and just breathe gently. So that can be beneficial. And speaking of music, music therapy. Actually, there are studies that have been done, and one study found that with harp therapy, the sounds from the harp and the tempo, when synchronized to the heart rate and the respiratory rate of the patient, their breathing rate pattern actually helped with things like anxiety, fear, shortness of breath, nausea, and even pain, right? And that was specifically with the harp. Now, a recent study that just came out actually said that with music therapy, if you actually give the person the option to choose the music, the type of music they want to listen to, that works even better, right? And so when we think about the type of music that somebody has liked to listen to, either now, recently, or in the past, and they get to choose that music, that's actually more enlivening, energizing for people, or even relaxing compared to a type of music they've never naturally been drawn to anyway, right? So that's something to keep in mind even as you create a setting within the home, right? And if you guys are just sitting and relaxing, rather than putting something that the books say, oh, this is good to calm the mind, if it's a type of music that a person doesn't like, then that's not going to calm their mind. It's going to make them more, either agitated or unsettled, and that's not really what we want to do, right? Massage, right? Massage actually works, and gentler forms such as Swedish massage may be better tolerated for people, and especially as the body starts to get a little bit weaker. And they may have more muscular pain and that sort of thing. But when combined with aromatherapy, there's actually a value. So I'll talk a little bit of aromatherapy next. Certain types of scents are more relaxing, others are more activating. In a study of 1,290 patients, what they found was that 50% reduction was seen in moderate to severe symptoms of pain, tiredness or fatigue, anxiety, and nausea with massage, right? So again, this is something where in our community, there are resources where people may come to your home to offer massage therapy, or in some cases, you go to their facility, but that can be beneficial also. With aromatherapy, it's actually pretty simple. So lavender works really well for relieving anxiety. And some people will take lavender oil and just put it in a little bowl on the dining table or on the counter. And so the scent is soothing. Some people also take it in a little small vial that they keep like in their purse. And usually the essential oils, you have to use glass vials, not plastic, because some of the oils can actually break down the plastic and that can make it toxic, right? And they'll keep it in their purse or, in their car or something. And if they do feel anxious, they'll just open up the bottle and take a little whiff, and that can help them as well, right? Then there's rosemary oil, which also boosts your alertness and decreases anxiety, right? With nausea and pain and depression, there's not as much evidence. And again, with essential oils, the real thing is, how it is stored matters, and you don't have to do overexposure. Some people put it, actually dab it right on their like forearm or something like that. And with that, what we always suggest is take a little bit first, make sure you don't have a reaction or a sensitivity to it, with your skin. There are different kinds of combinations as well. So with lavender and rose, it actually helps to relieve emotional and spiritual suffering for people in terms of even just distress, despair, that type of things. Sandalwood, rose, and bergamot help with kind of family coping. Grapefruit, mandarin, and lavender also again help sadness and despair. So there are different combinations that are available that actually can benefit. And there are specialists in our community who work with aromatherapy. Some people, will be distributors for companies like Young Living and other companies where they have access to these things, right? And the important thing to realize is that regardless of where we are in this journey, one of the most important things is that we always have a choice in terms of the thoughts we wish to hold on to, right? So we have a lot of thoughts. And the thing is, you can't really escape your thoughts because they come every 1.2 seconds. But what you choose to release and what you choose to hold on to, right? That's a choice that you can make. And so I always say you can choose to be at peace or you can make the other choice, but the choice is always yours. Don't point the finger elsewhere, right? And the importance of this is to realize that we have a certain sense of self-responsibility, but that most of us aren't selfish enough, right? And I use that word selfish and people think, yeah, well, I was always told not to be selfish. That's bad. But selfish is good when it's self-care, self-love, self-respect, right? When you really think about it, as a caregiver and even as a patient, if you have Parkinson's disease or condition, right, or a Parkinsonian syndrome, is to realize that most of us aren't selfish enough. And so it's really important for us to think that way, right? That matters a lot because if you think in this way, then at every fork in the road, think about what's going to invite peace into your life, peace into your heart, and that's the choice you make, right? That's important. The other one I like this image. I mean, the eyes, just looking at her makes me want to smile and kind of, wakes me up, not just coffee, right? Fill your cup with joy and you have very little room for anything else, right? So there's something that I have students do that I teach my patients, which is this deep belly breathing. And the way it works is if you put your hand on your stomach right now, when you breathe in, your belly should push out. So it's not about the chest going up and down as much as the belly pushing out. And when you breathe out, the belly comes back in nice and slow, right? So you breathe in slow, you breathe out even slower, right? And as you do, visualize your heart as a cup, right? And in that cup, with every breath, just feel it filling up with a sense of love and a sense of joy, right? Literally like you're pouring it in. And then once it fills up, let the overflow be the thing you share with the world, right? So you never empty your cup for anybody because if your cup is empty, it's hard to pour from an empty cup. But if you're giving the overflow, right, that can be given unconditionally. How they choose to receive it, what they do with it, whether it's received or not, those are things you can't control and it becomes immaterial because you're giving the overflow. And then whatever you get back is bonus because it wasn't the thing that was going to fill you up. You've already done the work to fill your cup, right? With your own sense of self-love and inviting joy into your heart, right? So this is really important. When you do this for 10 minutes, what's happening is your cortisol, the stress hormone, goes down, okay? Your DHEA, the feel-good chemical in the brain, that also has an effect on balancing your testosterone and estrogen in the body, actually normally goes down after 40, that goes up. That can have an effect on your quality and potentially de-aging your body. Serotonin, you think about affecting mood and depression, right? Prozac and those things. Well, that's got more receptors in the gut than it does in the brain. And so that helps with your gut motility, nutrient absorption, toxin release, right? So you can do 10 minutes of this deep breathing in the morning and 10 minutes at night, right? In the morning, you set your intention for the day, right? to have a great day, to fill your cup, and that way for the rest of the day, you're sharing the overflow. And at nighttime, to express gratitude for the day that was, right? Knowing that if we get closure and we're at peace with it, we all know that tomorrow is not a guarantee. In fact, none of us ever live a tomorrow. We're always living a today, right? And so I'm going to just quickly talk about what I call the core four of wellness. And this is what I've written the books on, which is nutrition, exercise, stress management, spirituality, because this can have an impact on slowing down potentially, right? Stabilizing or potentially reversing some of the symptoms that people with Parkinson's deal with. And more importantly, inviting optimal health into the caregivers as well, right? And why do we care about this stuff? Because the leading causes of death, heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, liver disease, and high blood pressure, right? Diet and inactivity were the leading risk factors of causes of death for these specific ones, okay? And why do we care? Because at the end of the day, a lot of these conditions, chronic inflammation, poor nutrition, lack of physical activity, and poor oral hygiene, right, contribute to nearly 500,000 or more deaths per year. Similar to the number of deaths caused by tobacco and 13 times more than caused by guns, right? And yet people don't talk about this, and yet some of these issues become, you know, campaign slogans and things like that. So we really have to think about where our priorities lie. And these chronic conditions, okay, and things like stroke and stuff, you know, there's billions of dollars at stake in terms of what the costs are, right? But better nutrition could actually reduce the cost by nearly $71 billion a year or more. And now it's over 100 billion because this was from the Healthy People 2020 objectives that they came out with in 2010, right? So what do you eat, right? And this is good for all of us, right? 7 to 9 servings of vegetables a day. If you look up Harvard Healthy Eating Plate, you'll come to a website where they have good information and recipes that can help, right? But bottom line is more vegetables, less fruit. Now with protein, beans, lentils, legumes, in the Mediterranean diet, they showed the best benefit. The fish and wine tasted great, but the legumes were the best benefit. And if you're inclined to eat meat, then fish, turkey, chicken, and within fish, cold water, freshwater, wild caught fish, salmon, tuna, you know, cod, that kind of stuff. Less of the shellfish, because shellfish can affect your cholesterol in a negative way if you eat too much, right? And then turkey and chicken. Red meat, the issue is the way it's prepared. So with red meat, what happens is people that eat red meat, if they're having it well done or charred or cooked on high heat, okay, there's a chemical called dioxin that's formed directly linked to colon, bladder, and then in men, prostate cancer. So red meat should be cooked on medium heat in the medium range somewhere, depending on the cut, and should not be charred. Bacon, sausage, ham, say goodbye, right? Bacon, you think about processed meats, have actually a 30% increased risk in terms of developing cancer. And specifically with bacon, you think about things like pork tapeworm and that sort of thing. It's just not healthy, and it triggers inflammation, increases risk of things like heart disease, etc. Sausage, if anybody could tell me the ingredients in a sausage, I might think about letting them have it, but you know, you can't because it's all the leftover parts, right? Ham has a lot of high salt that can trigger blood pressure, swelling in the legs, etc. And then with dairy, yogurt primarily. As people get older, more of us become lactose intolerant. And so we have to really be careful about dairy. If you notice gas, bloating, you know, change in your bowel movements or of your loved one, you have to think about lactose intolerance. And the easy way to test it, take it out of their routine for 3 to 4 weeks and then bring it back in. See how they do. For nuts, walnuts and almonds, right? So as they say, I'm nuts about nuts, but walnuts and almonds are healthy. Peanuts and cashews you can have on Super Bowl Sunday, or if Syracuse University goes back to the Final Four in basketball, then maybe. Otherwise, walnuts and almonds, okay? They help your healthy cholesterol to do better. Peanuts and cashews are a decent source of protein, but they don't help your healthy cholesterol, and so that's the problem. With hydration, water. That's your best drink, bar none, okay? Water is your best drink. Alcohol triggers inflammation in the body and is tied to multiple cancers. And so you really have to be careful about that. From the heart perspective, they talk about red wine and the benefit with resveratrol that it can give, which is true in data, but grape juice can give you that too. And all in all, you're not just the heart, you're your whole body. Alcohol has much more of a negative effect on the body than it does a positive one, right? And when you eat, the red is the carbohydrates. So carbohydrates go down as the day goes on, proteins and fats throughout the day, okay? And why that matters is because healthy proteins and healthy fats, right, will support your energy, will keep your sugar more even as well. Whereas carbohydrates, if you don't burn them off, then what happens is it gets stored as starches and sugars, and that leads to inflammation in the body as well. And having a higher sugar load in the body can trigger things like insulin being released, which tells the brain, I'm going to bring some sugar in, make me some storage, and then you start making fat cells. Sugar is also a fuel for cancerous cells for certain types of cancer, so you have to be careful about that, right? We talked about the mouth and oral health, right? And in 2007, less than 50% of people had seen a dentist within the previous 12 months. Brushing twice a day, flossing once a day, rinsing your mouth after a meal. Simple things to do can make a big difference in terms of reducing inflammation in the gums, and inflammation in the mouth can trigger inflammation everywhere else, including the brain, your blood vessels, your joints, all of that, right? So speaking of joints, we talk about exercise. Exercise is good, period, right? The recommendation actually states that walking is as good as anything else. So you don't have to, run a marathon, but walk. And the goal is to get 300 or more minutes in a week of moderately intense activity, which means going hard enough that you can speak in small sentences, but not have long-winded conversations while you're walking. Also, not so you're going to pass out, right? And so with exercise, the key is doing it as little as 10 minutes at a time benefits your heart health. So you don't have to get an hour every day necessarily, but try to get the minimum of 300 minutes in a week and put it in your calendar so that it's not I'll get to it, right? Because then something else will get there first. The point of this slide really is to think about, doing it is better than not doing it. Time of day can have an impact, right? But the most important thing is just try to be consistent. And things like Tai Chi, Qigong, these things that are balance oriented can actually help someone with Parkinson's, but also have a mental calming effect, along with an impact on things like blood pressure and that sort of thing, right? So that's really important. Plus it's relaxing, right? As opposed to this person where there's, a lot of stress. This was me when I had hair, just actually. But I don't want to feel like this, right? And even though we take care of our loved ones and the day gets very hectic, the point is, when it comes to stress, the real key is focusing on the things you can do something about, right? And letting go of the things you can't control. It sounds very easy for me to say, and you think about it like, that's not that easy. So I had a lady who came in with a lot of stress and I had to write it down, and she came back with 8 pages, right, in a 15-minute family doc visit. And I said, you know what, do me a favor, make 2 columns, things I can do something about, things I can't control. And when she came back, 1 page was hers to own. The other 7 were stresses in her life, but things that she couldn't directly do anything about. And so every time her mind drifted to those things, she would take the same time and energy to come back to the list of things she could do something about, focus, take an item, make a plan, and then get it done. And then she'd cross it off with a permanent marker. Every night she'd look at how much she got done versus worrying about the things she didn't get done, right? So it allowed her to be proactive in her living experience, and that worked for her. Realizes that our relationships are like a ladder, right? The two posts are held together by the rungs. And if the rungs aren't maintained or strengthened, then the two posts drift apart, right? So when that happens, then relationships suffer. So what are these rungs, right? They're these words: commitment, honesty, communication, love, availability, mutual respect, trust, shared goals, caring, acceptance, forgiveness, compromise, right? And we have to continue to reinforce these, otherwise our relationship suffers, right? And I thought that when I made this slide over a decade ago, that I was a genius, right? Thinking about this way. But what I realized is I was making a slide for medical students a few years ago, and DNA, the building block of who we are physically, is actually two posts held together by rungs that stem from both sides. Without it, we wouldn't be alive, right? So, as much as we think that we, think outside the box, the universe and nature actually have a lot of answers already for us, right? And I'll give you an example of that as I get to the spiritual wellness idea, right? Which is to say that the human heart, okay, beats 86,400. I'm going to just bring you guys up for a second as I say this, just so we can kind of just at least see each other for a little bit, right? And then I'll finish up with the slides. The human heart beats 86,400 to 144,000 times a day, okay? And every time the heart beats, it sends off blood, doesn't know where it's going, doesn't know what it's going to do, doesn't know whether it'll be received or not, and yet it keeps on giving, right? And we give the symbol of love to the heart. So literally giving love unconditionally, right? Showing us the way. And when the blood comes back, it doesn't know where it's been. It doesn't know what it's done. It doesn't care what shape it's in. It opens up, embraces it, nurtures it, and then releases it again, right? Receiving love unconditionally. So if our heart is doing this, right, over 100,000 times a day, how can we not be the embodiment of that, right? And so when you're feeling stressed or frustrated or anxious or angry or sad, right, remember that in those moments, your heart is still continuing to love you unconditionally in both giving and receiving, right? And so you use your breath in those moments, just come back to the heart, come back to that feeling of unconditional love, right? Because oftentimes our expectation is what leads to our disappointment, right? And so if we learn to live in acceptance rather than expecting, right, what happens is we start to appreciate. Acceptance and forgiveness lead to contentment and peace. We have to start with ourselves, right? Because oftentimes we're harshest on ourselves, right? And so I'm going to just get back to the slides here. And so with our relationships, I think about this and I call this the circles of peace, right? Peace begins within, right? If I'm not at peace, I can't have peace in my couplehood. If our couplehood's not at peace, it's hard to have peace with our children. And then I put our parents, extended family and friends, and then everyone else. And I put it in this order because when we're younger, right, and especially when we have young children, right, they're our priority and our parents are more independent. But as we get older and our children become more independent, our parents, become more dependent. And so you can flip those priorities. But the point here is, if any of the outer circles affect your inner peace, think about where your priorities lie, right? And so we focus on this, right? You are a part of every relationship that you're in. If you're not at peace, it's not possible to have peace in those relationships because you're a part of that equation, right? The minute you're at peace, the potential exists for you to have peace in all those relationships because you're a part of that equation, right? And so then people think, well, you know, wow, you're asking me to do all these things, like a 180-degree change, right? But really, it starts with 1 degree of change. One thing that you can do today to move towards your own sense of contentment and peace, right? And I like this picture. This is a dock in San Diego at Paradise Point Resort and Spa, where we used to have our integrative medicine conferences over the last decade. And every year I went there, you know, the water was the same, right? Look at this side, right, with the waves and ripples. And look at this side, so serene and calm, right? So I call this the bridge over troubled waters because this is a state of agitation and this is a state of calm. And really, what's the difference between one side and the other? There are only a few posts underneath, right? It wasn't a boat that just took off. This is how it is every year. And the real difference is just a 1 degree of change, right? In terms of our attitude, our mindset, our approach, our expectation, right? And a simple thing you can do to start off with to go from a state of agitation to a state of calm is put a smile on your face, right? So I'm going to bring us back up again for a quick second. So I want everybody to just smile with me for a second, right? Put a smile on your face, right? Fake it, right? It's okay. Even when you fake a smile, cortisol goes down, serotonin goes up, our feel-good chemical, right? And so literally you're creating a biochemical change even by faking a smile. So, you know, it doesn't work with everything, but fake it till you make it works with a smile, right? And so that's really important as well. So whenever you think about it during the daytime, just remind yourself to put a smile on your face, right? And for what it's worth, when you fake a smile long enough, it suddenly becomes real, right? And, you know, we're here right now in this moment, right? So every time you think about it, and I only got a couple more minutes of slides and we can talk, put a smile on your face, right? Fake it, right? Unfortunately for you guys are lousy fakers because it's all real. I see it, right? You can't help yourself. And that's important, right? So put that smile on your face. And when we do, we start to recognize that if you connect the dots of joy in your life, you can paint a smile, right? We can all paint the other picture, but if we focus on connecting the dots of joy, and this is what I was talking about, right? We have a lot of experiences in life, but we can choose what to hold on to and what to let go and what to let be, right? So some things we actively let go. Some things we just let be because that's not the stuff that we can control, so we don't deal with it. But there are things that we can hold on to, right? And the joys are things that we can actually proactively add to our life by creating those moments, right? If you are in charge of creating a joyful moment every day in your household, right? That's going to shift the way you approach the day, right? And it may simply be telling a bad joke. It may be a second where you tell everybody, hey, just smile for a second. All right, go about your business, right? All of those things are things that just make us reflect on the fact that we do have some say. We can't always control what Parkinson's does or what other chronic diseases do, whether somebody has a stroke or other degenerative conditions or autoimmune conditions. What we can do in this moment is try to proactively create a joyful moment. And if we keep adding those into our living experience, it shifts the balance of the way in which we experience life in itself, right? And that's really important, right? And so I leave you with this, right? This was us. My son is now a high school, college freshman, actually. And this was, you know, a few years ago, I went to visit Chicago. And this was my version of my Jordan-esque, Michael Jordan-esque jump. And I'll tell you that at the end of the day, we all can dream big and then live our best life moving forward, right? And if we can do that and support our loved ones in the process, then I think we can give ourselves a pat on the back, but more importantly, and you like that pun, it's a pat on the back, right, Pat?
Right.
At the same time, it's about embracing the living experience. And I think that's really important. So I'm going to stop the screen share right now. And if anybody has any questions or thoughts or comments, I'm happy to share or give you my perspective. I think you're able to mute yourself if you need to, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
you have to.
Yeah.
I can't unmute you, so unmute yourselves if you want to talk.
Now I can talk.
Go ahead, Jean.
Oh, thank you, Cynthia. I was just wondering, do you have a suggestion about good resources for essential oils in our community?
Yeah, so I can get you guys that. I know at our hospital, there's a Dr. Caitlin Scarlett who does work with essential oils.
Mhm.
And there's actually an Integrative Health Alliance in Central New York. So even if you're able to go online and look up Integrative Health Alliance,
Okay.
there are several people who work with essential oils and have expertise. Nature Time would be a great place also. And they actually have references for people in the community who work with essential oils as well. And what I say is start small, right? And then kind of work with it so that you don't overwhelm, because some scents, like things like cinnamon and some of the stronger scents, can be activating, and sometimes they can actually make people a little more agitated. So if you start simple with things like lavender or at nighttime chamomile, things like that, that can be more relaxing and soothing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things I was thinking about too, Dr. Navati, was a lot of the ideas you've given us are things that we can do together. My person who has Parkinson and myself as care partner, and we can do these things together where a lot of the other things in life we may not be able to do anymore, like can't play tennis or something. So I was thinking how good that is for both people in the situation. And I was also thinking that if you have someone to do it with, to do the 10 minutes of breathing in the morning, it seems like we'd all be more willing to do it.
Yep. And there's actually something called chocolate meditation, right? Where you can put a piece of chocolate in your mouth.
Oh, yes.
Right. And instead of biting, people like that. And instead of biting into it, you just leave the chocolate in your mouth and then just breathe nice and when your mind drifts, right, just come back to that feeling of the chocolate as it transforms, right? People use the Lindt truffles because then when that chocolate melts, you get this gush of the liquid center, and that's like your aha nirvana kind of moment. The Dove squares, because in the wrapper, there's always a message that the universe is giving you that's personalized to you every time.
Right? Yeah. I like that chocolate part.
Yeah, so dark chocolate, 70% or more is
kisses.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Anyone else?
Well,
go ahead, Pat.
Just a wonderful talk, Dr. Nanvanti. I really appreciate it. I want people to think just for a moment. Do you feel the love that he has for you? And then look at the screen and you feel the love the other people have for you. And this is it. That's the center. Peace and contentment. And keep, go back to that. Go back to that. And then, this is the most stressful time any of us have ever had with everything going on in the world. And Dr. Nanvanti, the chocolate thing notwithstanding, the breathing, that deep breathing, 10 minutes, twice a day, do it. It's a little step. We have beat you over the head with nutrition and exercise. These little changes can make a big difference, but you got to take the little step, that commitment to go ahead and do that.
And a little pearl for you guys. I'll give you a quick. So the 10 minutes works very nicely, especially when you're starting off. Harvard looked at people who averaged 24 minutes at a time for 8 weeks only, okay? And during that 8 weeks, every week they did a functional MRI of their brain that showed brain activity, okay, and density. And by the end of 8 weeks of that 24 minutes of deep breathing every day, they saw the density in different parts of the brain change, okay? Literally cellular change just with the power of your breath. So I think Pat's point is very well taken, which is, you can do this. And as Cynthia said, we can do it with our partner. We can do it together. And these are moments of joy that we create And that's our living experience, right? When I reflect back, I want to reflect back on the joys. And yeah, there were some trying times, and there are some trying times, but the beauty is that in this moment, I can bring joy back, right? And that's important.
And
I wanted to go ahead, Roseanne.
just want to add about the music too, because we all have racing minds, Parkinson's or not Parkinson's. And I listen to soothing music. You know, you can go on YouTube or Amazon, and there's Spotify, and just, they have so much music out there that you can find, like Dr. Nanavantis said, that you like and that's soothing to you. And that stops your mind from racing and brings down your heart rate and your anxiety. It's wonderful.
That's a good testimony, Roseanne. And just another along that line, Symphoria has been putting up little short concerts on YouTube. And ever since, maybe March 1st, I build into my days at home structure, turning that on and listening maybe for only a 10-minute concert without anything else, no answering phone, no getting a drink of water, just listening to that music. And it's been a comfort through this time when my life has changed so much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to let Dr. Nanavati go. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your experience. And thank you mostly for your attitude. Namaste.
Yes. Namaste. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So good to see you again. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
And hopefully I'll see you guys soon.
Okay.